the main topic is Man City and them, because they were initially banned from European football for 2 years for breaching financial fair play, and now they've been reinstated into European competitions after they were found supposedly to have not breached financial fair play anymore, which I would be very, very surprised if they hadn't, when you consider how much money they spend year on year on year on bringing in new players.
Absolutely. It's really disgraceful because they initially found them guilty. So they were like, oh, okay, well, that's 2 years ban. You can't play in the European competitions anymore. That's it. You can go away. And then Man City went, oh, we didn't do anything wrong. What are you on about? And then FIFA went, okay. No, not FIFA, sorry, UEFA went, yeah, we think you did. Went to Court of Arbitration of Sport. And then they were like, oh, well, they might have been, they might not have been. And UEFA just turned around and went, okay, well, you're not guilty. You can just pay 10 million euros. So it's like, well, why are they paying 10 million euros if they're not guilty? Which one is it? Are they guilty or are they not?
Yeah, why are they paying 10 million euros if they're not guilty? Surely they wouldn't have to do anything. They'd just be free to go and compete. That doesn't make any sense.
Honestly, the financial fair play, which is why Man City have been banned in the first place, because they were spending too much money. I don't know into detail the ins and outs of the financial fair play, but I'm pretty sure in very vague terms, you can't spend more than what you return in. That includes all sponsorships and all that sort of malarkey, which kind of levels the books a little bit. So in theory, the smaller clubs can grow and essentially not cheat their way through like Man City have by just spending on everything.
It allows them to be more competitive because in theory, everyone's roughly like able to spend roughly the same amount, because obviously, you can't spend at a loss and sign players at a loss. And that would also then put those same clubs, if they do bring in players at a loss, then it would put them in real trouble of going under if, say, a global pandemic hits and you don't have any income.
Yeah, it's just incredible because, of course, you've got this financial fair play that's come in, was it 10 years ago or so? I think it was 2009 or whatever, 2010. And that was, on paper, the rules of, right, you can't spend more than what you're bringing in. And this is the purest corruption form from these stupid organizations, right? And I'm all for all these big organizations looking after them, but how these organizations are actually taking the piss now. You're literally bribing more money with more money. It's incredible. It's stopping the smaller teams from growing where they're not bringing in enough money, but in theory, that makes it a level playing field when it's an absolute fucking shithousery with the likes of Atlanta, who are doing incredibly well this year in the league and Champions League and whatnot, whether they're involved in. But then you've got the Man City who are just fucking ploughing money into left, right and centre and can't even beat Liverpool.
And when you consider Liverpool's net spend in the previous years, they've absolutely done Man City in. They've made them look like complete mugs.
Yeah. Liverpool, what Klopp has built there in the last 5 years is incredible. And I'm not a Liverpool fan, so don't get me wrong. I do not like Liverpool, but credit has got to be given where it's due. Credit is not going to be given when you buy trophies left, right and centre, and you can't even win the flipping Champions League while spending so much. That's why I find it even more insane.
Exactly right. But the thing that I've found out looking into this, right? So they can't spend more than they earn in a year. Man City's kit deal, this is just their kit deal, is worth £650 million over a 10-year period. So that's £65 million a year. And then you've got to add on top the money that they get from the Premier League. And then you've probably got some kind of other sponsorship deals as well. And even with all this cash that they have going in, they still overspent. Still.
With how football's run nowadays, you haven't got just one sponsor on your shirt. You've got a sleeve sponsor now. You've got a training shirt sponsor. You've got all these things where it adds up to about 20 or so how they call affiliates, not sponsors nowadays, apparently. So you've got these affiliations where, give or take, of course, the bottom ones are not going to be paying you 65 million a year. They're going to be paying you more like $1 million, 2 or 3 a year, maybe. So on average, if you say you've got 10 million with all of the, the top elite clubs that are the Man Cities or the Chelseas or the Man Uniteds, where they've got big commercial standing within football, they'll probably, we can estimate it at 10 million or so for the whole shebang, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
10 million for 20 athletes, that would be 200 million. Give or take, there's going to be bigger and smaller numbers, of course, but that's just from sponsorships from the year. Those numbers can very easily buy you a shitload of players.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not enough.
No, clearly not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this position in the first place. And earlier on, I was looking up the total value of like each different squad, right? And we're gonna talk about this a bit later. But Atalanta, who's the team that's second in Serie A at the moment, their squad value is 250 million, supposedly euros. By the way, 250 million euros, and they're doing very well in Serie A. They've scored the second most goals amongst any team in Europe right now. They're doing incredibly well when you consider they don't seem to have any like blockbuster stars. And then below them is Man City. Their squad value was 930 million euros. What?
Yeah, you had Pep give his interview, didn't he? Where we wanted to sign Sanchez and we couldn't afford him. We wanted to sign Maguire, we couldn't afford him. Well, yes, you couldn't afford him because you bought another 5 or 6 players that year worth about 30, 40, 50 million. When the other teams, like Man United, spread it out across 2 years, as I believe, and that was their superstar signing for those years. That was the only signing that they had, and I'm not backing Man United in any form of way saying that their spending is justifiable. All I'm saying is that Man City and how they're dealing with all of this is an absolute disgrace because they're celebrating it like a top team would celebrate winning a Champions League.
I saw a brilliant meme that was like each fan will have like a moment that they think back to, right? For me as a West Ham fan, I know it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but the day that West Ham got promoted back into the Premier League, that's the day that I will always remember. I'm sure you, being a Chelsea fan, that night in Munich, that'll be one for you. For Liverpool fans, it'll probably be that night in Istanbul. Man United will probably be 99 treble or whatever. You get the idea. For Man City fans, it will be the day that financial fair play rules were just flouted.
That just sums it up, though. They're literally celebrating it like they have won it.
Exactly, like they've won the league. I'm surprised they don't go and trash the city centre like the Scousers did.
Yeah, I mean, they might have some sort of self-respect about them. That's probably why.
Exactly, but like, what I'm still confused about is why they were found not guilty of breaking financial fair play rules, but then they had to pay £10 million. Who's that going to? Why do they need to pay it if they weren't guilty in the first place? I know you've already touched on this, but who's the money going to? Why do they need it?
Well, when FIFA is the umbrella company not company, not allowed to say that. Organisation, yeah, that have, again, as we've touched before, on trillions in their reserves, is their essentially parent organisation. I mean, I'm not going to have much hopes for UEFA. It's quite clear where that money's going to, and it's only going to get worse. That culture within, like we've talked about before, in that corruption within FIFA, it stems down to UEFA.
Yeah.
And that will stem down to some football organisations like Jack Walker. Where was he from? Trinidad and Tobago, was it, something like that?
It was, yeah.
God forbid, to know what goes on in those organisations in the Football Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I know that there is some football associations that kind of try and stand up towards it, but it's still not enough when it's a handful of them just actually trying to do the right thing. But what's the right thing nowadays? You can't even say.
I mean, it's a losing battle at this point when you're the one person who's trying to fight back against all this corruption, and when you consider the head of FIFA, the ex-head of FIFA, Sepp Blatter, was insanely corrupt. You've now got the guy who runs FIFA at the moment. I can't remember his name for the life of me. He doesn't seem to be much better than Blatter in terms of the fact that there's nobody that's trying to stand against him, in the elections that they have. They just have, it's just a procession for him to be re-elected again and again. And that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense if you're looking at it from a governance perspective. You would want someone to be challenging them and saying, well, why aren't you doing this, and this way? It seems to be like a dictatorship of sorts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's the culture within that organization, isn't it? That they have been doing things their way for over many years, and that's not going to be changed. And when you go into an organization like that, it's very difficult to walk away from it and say, do you know what, I can change things. You can't, because you are against most people who want the same thing to be saying a similar way. Changing something like that is much more difficult than changing anything else, I think.